We have a major Nick Robertson update as multiple new reports have revealed some very interesting details surrounding Nick Robertson and his future in Toronto following his trade request earlier on in the offseason. We're going to break down what those reports are and what it can mean going forward for the Leafs on this episode, as well as discuss some recent trade rumors surrounding the forward, because it seems like all signs are pointing to him being shipped out of Toronto sometime soon. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that on this episode. But before we do, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, about 70% of you, scroll down and hit that subscribe button. We produce daily Leafs content. It would mean the world to Darius and myself if you could do that, as we're on the road now to 12,000 subscribers, and we do daily Leafs content. And Leafs news is starting to pick up a little bit, slowly but surely, as we approach the regular season. It's going to be a very exciting season, Darius, like we've discussed on this channel. But a big question mark still remains for the Toronto Maple Leafs is Nick Robertson. And we talk about, again, he requested a trade earlier on in the offseason. We'll dive into that. But a new report came out revealing some interesting details about his contract because he is still unsigned. And a report came out that the Toronto Maple Leafs forward is unlikely to receive an offer sheet. And basically, even though it's unlikely, Robertson could be an offer sheet target from many teams around the NHL, particularly those in a rebuild with plenty of cap space. And I'll dive into this full report here, discuss some numbers in a minute. But I just want to get your thoughts on this, Darius. We know, and you're a big fan of Nick Robertson, the Leafs have yet to offer him a contract. A trade seems more likely at this point, according to all rumors here, especially given the fact they're not going to offer him a contract. It's a very interesting time for your Leafs fans surrounding this, because this really paints the picture for not only what they're going to do in the future and whether or not Nick Robertson becomes a good player, but how they're going to fill the rest of their forward spot if they let him go or if he doesn't get signed.
Yeah, and I think he's a great player. Like you said, I'm a fan of Nick Robertson. You know, I see all the discourse online. I see it in our comment section too, of people saying, and I totally agree in a way, that if you don't want to be here and you don't want to play for the Leafs, then you should be shipped away, right? You shouldn't be a Toronto Maple Leaf. But I think it's more about Nick Robertson wanting a better opportunity for his career, which he hasn't gotten in Toronto yet, than anything else. I think he does want to be a Maple Leaf and would like to succeed with the Leafs, but he hasn't been given that opportunity. And you know what? He's played well with the opportunities he's been given too, because if you look at his stats from last year, you know, he scored a lot of points. I say a lot of points, you know, he was less than half a point a game player, but I feel like he wasn't given an opportunity and he was very sheltered. And anytime he made any mistake, Sheldon Keefe stapled him to that bench. So obviously you're not going to perform when, you know, you have all that pressure on your shoulders. So I still think this is a great player. He's not even 23 yet. Say what you will about his neutral zone play and his defensive zone play. I see it all. It's terrible. It's not great. He has to work on it, but hopefully the Leafs can, you know, mend this relationship, keep him on the team. I think that would be the best case scenario for both parties. Now, like you brought up, I think it's pretty interesting. Unlikely to get an offer sheet. The Leafs Nation also says that he is likely to get an offer sheet. So there is the duality there for sure. I think it's more unlikely that he gets offer sheeted because I think his value is very low in terms of trade value right now. Another team could probably, you know, they don't want to give up something compensation like draft picks to offer sheet this player. They'd rather just, I guess, trade for his rights, right? Because, you know, his value is low right now, but I still think there's a lot of value in the player, right? If you were to keep him and kind of try and mend that relationship. Is it too far gone? I don't know, right? On the Nick Robertson side of things, but it's pretty interesting. I think the Leafs should keep him, but it looks like all signs right now look like, you know, they may move off of him in terms of a trade.
Yeah, and reports are conflicting a little bit depending who you want to follow here. I tend to think they're not going to offer him an offer sheet. I think there's more likely that they trade him at this point. And there's a bunch of rumors circulating, which we'll dive into in a minute. But you can see this here. The San Jose Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks can offer Robertson a chance to play closer to his hometown in California. Both teams have plenty of cap space, and adding Robertson shouldn't be difficult. Another team not too far from Pasadena is the Utah Hockey Club. One interesting option would be the Dallas Stars. Like, realistically, there's a lot of teams. If you have the cap space and the ability to get this guy, he's a 22, soon, like you mentioned, soon to be 23-year-old player who's shown the ability to score at the NHL level, even though, again, he only put up 27 points, 56 games, but that's a lot of points if you actually watched the Leafs games and saw how up and down Nick Robertson's season was from getting benched to being put in play. It's obviously impossible to find any sort of consistency when you're doing that. The fact he put up 27 points, given the circumstances, is very interesting to me. I'm not a huge Nick Robertson fan necessarily. I know you are, Darius. I think he's still a very good player. You mentioned some of his weaknesses. I think the Leafs have a lot of weaknesses similar to what he does, and I almost would rather fill a position that he's playing with someone a little bit different that hopefully still scores goals. But you can't argue the fact that at the end of the day, the Leafs still need goal scoring. And whether, you know, they have Mitch Marner, they have William Nylander, they have the best goal scorer in the NHL, Austin Matthews, they still need goal scoring, and you're not going to get a better goal scorer at this age for Nick Robertson, I don't think, in a trade. But you look at some of the teams that could be interested in him. We know a couple months ago there was some trade chatter about Kyle Davidson and should they make a call on Nick Robertson. This dates all the way back to June. We've saw some more talk. We covered it a couple weeks ago from the Chicago Blackhawks as well. Some more recent reports saying, hey, there's a good chance the Blackhawks make the call just because they're in the point now where they're rebuilding, they're retooling around Connor Bedard, all these guys. I think the Blackhawks could be a very interesting team for them, and they dated all the way back to June and earlier on in the offseason, and they're still, according to new reports, still pushing for a Nick Robertson, at least inquiring about him. So I think all signs point to a trade. I don't know if it's to the Blackhawks, but I think they make the most logical sense for both sides if the Leafs want to trade him.
Yeah, I think the Chicago Blackhawks are a very underrated trade partner for the Leafs because I think this is a player, Nick Robertson, that they would love. And, it's going to hurt if he does get traded because I think he can score 30 to 35 goals in the NHL. I truly do, right? On a good team with really good line mates. And that's what Chicago is going to be in a few years. So, and playing time, of course. I think Robertson averaged just under 12 minutes. So that's another thing as well. So I think they're an underrated trade partner. We did a proposal on, Jack McBain from, I believe he plays for Utah now. So that would be interesting as well, closer to home for Nick Robertson too. And Jack McBain is a big player who, would add to the Leafs kind of identity crisis. Yeah, it would help with that. So that's another option too. So a couple options for the Leafs. I saw another report. I don't know how much validity there was behind it that Nick Robertson will not be receiving a contract from the Toronto Maple Leafs. So there's also that to keep an eye on too. So there's a lot coming from all angles. Will he be offer sheeted? Won't he? Right? We don't know the answer to that. I think it's more likely that he won't be offer sheeted. Will he be traded or won't he? Right? And will he be signed? Because at the end of the day, they have to sign the contract, both parties, right? If the Leafs don't want him or if he doesn't want to sign with the Leafs, that's the first, order of business. And I think if he does sign, if it's a sign or trade, I think it's more attractive to another team. We talked about that with Liljegren, so that's an option for the Leafs too. But lots up in the air right now, and training camp is soon. It's coming up very, very quickly where all the players report. And if Nick Robertson starts missing time, we saw it with Nylander, it's going to become a problem for him. And honestly, the Leafs, because you have an NHL player sitting, right? And you're not going to get anything for him in terms of value if you don't trade him and he's just sitting at home. So the Leafs have to figure this out pretty quickly.
Yeah, and not to mention the home runner thing. Obviously, he's probably going to play in Toronto, but having a lot of distractions. And we know, according to multiple sources earlier on in the offseason, Chris Johnston, probably the most notable reporter who reported it, said that Robertson told the Leafs he had no intention of re-signing with the team and would like to be traded elsewhere. So all signs are pointing. Your reports are coming out that he's unlikely to get an offer sheet. He said himself he doesn't want to re-sign in Toronto, but Brad Treliving did come out and said there's a great opportunity for Robertson in Toronto, and it's clear the team does not want to lose the 22-year-old. That makes sense because really, if they wanted to part ways with him and it wasn't going to be a tough decision, they probably would have already been done because there's going to be, like we've discussed, a lot of teams calling for. I mean, a lot of the teams that could sign him or offer sheet him are probably also calling for a trade to gauge the opportunity. So it's going to be interesting. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on this. Are you on the side of you want to keep Nick Robertson, or do you think that, hey, he doesn't want to be here, let's ship him out? Or are you on the Darius side? You're a huge Nick Robertson fan and wants to sign a 15-year deal. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know what your thoughts are. See you tomorrow.